And maybe one final example of me showing how to use the texture. For this, I'm going to use these 3 leaves here, and I want to make it look like they are see-through. So we want to reveal the sky behind them. So what I will do first of all is to group them together. So the 3 shapes selected, Command or Control G. Then I am going to use the Make Mask option and turn off Clip. And this time, instead of using the original shapes, I'm just going to use some ellipses, because these original shapes are also like big ellipses or parts of ellipses. And I just have to make sure that I'm in the opacity mask. So once the group is selected, I click on the opacity mask and then draw the shape. So the first ellipse that I want to create is here. And I'm just going to rotate this a bit so it's more aligned to that other shape up there. And then I will apply the linear gradient on this. And I can set up the gradient. I only want the bottom of the leaves to a bit texturized like that. And then we can already go into Effect, Apply Grain. And then before you expand this effect, of course, you have the control over how the spread is. So we can drag this out a bit more, have more of a transition or less, be more subtle like this. And then you can even flip this around by using the reverse option. So that way we can have it starting here, and we can also make this look more interesting to create the division this way. Let's drag it out a bit. Maybe the transition can start further out like that. And this way it will look a bit like there is a split in the leaf. So yeah, that shape that we created can be moved a little bit higher. But yeah, that essentially creates a slightly more interesting detail. So we have a solid outline, but within the shape itself, we see through a bit. And what we can do, since the whole thing is a group, is to duplicate this object within the opacity mask. So have that ellipse selected, and then Alt or Option, click and drag to duplicate it out. Now the only thing is that you have to be careful that once these shapes overlap each other, they are going to affect what you can see and what is hidden away. So one thing that you can do is to have this ellipse cut, duplicate it, select the 2 together, and then use the Shape Builder tool, delete these parts so it becomes like just a crescent or a moon shape. And then that one is not going to affect the other details. So this way we can set this up exactly the way we wanted it. So align this up here, and then using the gradient tool, we can still adjust the values as well. That looks quite nice. And then now we just copy this shape, paste it again, drag it up and rotate it one more time. I don't want to overlap this other shape, so I can even use the eraser tool. Let's Shift D and then Alt or Option key to delete from it. Drag it up here, align it, create that nice division in the shape, and then we can use the gradient tool and just align it exactly the way we wanted it. Just a very subtle effect like that. Okay, so we can see this from a distance, and these textures definitely add more interest, and we could use the same thing on the left side as well by exiting the mask and locking this group here on the right. You can just use Command or Control 2 on the keyboard. That quickly locks it. And then Command or Control A should only select these other details, which once again I will group together into another detail. This can be placed in the plants as well. So that's one big object here which I can move around. And just like before, I'm going to make a mask, turn off clipping, and then I'm going to use an ellipse, or it can even be a rectangle. Just make sure you draw it inside the opacity mask. So I'll just draw this quickly and set it up as a radial gradient in this case. That could also work. And then we can just adjust it, maybe reverse it. That makes more sense here. And then just drag this down, drag it up, drag it in like this. And then let's apply the grain effect on this. And there you go, a very nice subtle effect there. If you want more control on where the effect shows, you could even use the freeform gradient. So that's the third option in the gradient panel. Once you select that, it's going to give you points similar to the Puppet Warp tool, and you can apply the colors here. So you can select that, set that up as white, then select this, set that up as black, and then if I move the black point here and the white point there, I will have the effect or the masking only show up here on the left side. But if I flip this around and move the black point up here, then I will have it showing up around the edges. So that's a nice way of doing it. And what we can actually do is to trace along the edge of this shape, so we can add additional points. I'm just going to use black on these points around the edges. Also add black here, and then keep drawing around the edge. Let me just select this previous point, following the edge like that. So that's the black points. And then we have these points here. This one here I would like to remove, so I can just select that, press backspace on the keyboard. Instead, I would like to have this shape continued, which I will set to white. So this should be set to white. And then continuing this point, I can again trace the outline where I would like the effect to disappear. So if we go up this way, and then also come down this way maybe, now we have the transition exactly aligned or closely aligned to the outline of the shape. So when you have these irregular shapes, this is a good technique to use. Again, you will see these stops that you create with the gradient tool. Whenever you press G on the keyboard, they will appear, and then you can move them individually. So for instance, now I can just select this point, drag it in. If I want more of the masking effect to show, I can drag those in as well. Or if I want to be more subtle, I can drag them out. And this point as well, I can further adjust, and immediately I can see more of the leaves. If I want to see even more, I can drag this point in as well, and so on and so forth. So I am not going to vectorize these effects that I applied here. I'm just going to keep them as raster effects, just so you can compare. These are still raster based, and these are the ones where I vectorized it, both on the water and on the sand and on the surfer girl. And it's up to you. You can even combine the two, so you can keep some in a raster effect format and some already vectorized. That can also create some nice variety. So I hope you will have fun with this illustration. I can't wait to see your version.